He's like, what does that mean? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call our workshop meeting of the Vista City Council to order with a roll call from our city clerk, Kathy Valdez.
The record shall reflect that all members are present with exception of Councilmember Green.
And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance since Councilmember Green is not with us tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any member of the public may address the city council on agency-related matters that are not on the agenda. We allowing that during workshop? We are. So if you've got something to talk to us about that's not on the agenda tonight, you can grab a speaker slip from the table outside of the council chambers, or if you're participating via Zoom, you can use the raise your hand feature or press *9 if you'd like to speak. If there are more than 10 speakers, we will hear the first 10 during this segment, and the remaining speakers will be heard during our second oral communications opportunity. Do we have any public speakers? Seeing none, we will now close the opportunity for this meeting for public comment. Don't worry, you can still speak on discussion item 1 if you like. Our first discussion item this evening is a Parks and Recreation Master Plan and the Wave Water Park Needs Assessment Update. And I see we do have one public speaker for this item. If any others, members of the public, wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature or by pressing *9 on their phone or submitting a request to speak card here at the dais. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our Recreation and Community Services Director, Mike Pacheco, will introduce the item, and Nilay Bhatt from Next Practice Partners will give the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council. Again, Mike Pacheco, Recreation and Community Services Director. Just wanted to provide an update tonight where we're at with Parks and Rec Master Plan and the needs assessment, as you mentioned, Mayor, and just give you some of the findings so far with these meetings. With that, I'd like the consultant team to kick this off, starting with Nilay Bhatt, the founder and CEO of Next Practice Partners.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff, community. Good to be with all of you. As I was just walking outside for a moment, the mayor asked me to keep it short, so I promise I'll be done by 9 o'clock. Just kidding.
Kathy, could you put 15 minutes on the clock, please?
But my name's Nilay Bhatt. We talked about this earlier with Next Practice Partners. We're local as well as global, and fortunate to again be a part of this process with Vista. With our partners, RHA as well, based in Riverside, and have done a lot of this work with us together. And you're going to hear from one of our other partners that you have not heard from before, Aquatic Design Group. They're based in Carlsbad, specialized in aquatic work as well, and they are the ones who'll talk a lot more with their assessment and findings for the wave specifically. So a quick recap in terms of some of the existing conditions, both with respect to access as well as the community profile. Based on information from the Trust for Public Land, about half the residents in Vista currently are within a 10-minute walk, which is just below the national median of 55%. Encouragingly, the population continues to grow, which also means the need for parks, recreation, aquatic features, all the rest will continue rising as well. With an increasingly diverse population that is also aging to some degree, but has a very good balance of a young family and an older active adult. I refuse to call them seniors, they don't behave like it, but a very active adult population at the same time. And from an income standpoint, both the per capita, which is in yellow, and the household income in blue are more or less on par with California averages. So not a hugely affluent or high disposable income, and certainly a focus on value for money as well. From a recreation trend standpoint too, firstly, as we compare, again, this is very much in line with California statistics for linguistics, background, etc. From a trend standpoint, pretty encouraging. This is based on market potential for the likelihood of people to participate in certain activities. The blue line is the national average of 100. Anything above that means they are more likely to participate. Anything below that, less likely to participate. So football, which football season starts today. So if anyone's following or has not set your fantasy football lineup just yet, you might need to do it pretty quickly. But other than that, you can see all these sports as well, all the way to soccer, 39% higher than national averages, which is really, really encouraging. Fitness standpoint too, a number of activities from yoga, jogging, aerobics, etc. also are higher than national averages, while some of the outdoor activities are, but a number of them are below. Now, this doesn't mean these activities are what they participate in here. It simply means they do like to participate in them wherever they might be. So, in a nutshell, we've got a growing community that is diversifying, aging with middle-of-the-line income characteristics that mostly love sports, a lot of the fitness as well, doesn't quite have access to parks within walking distance fully, and would like to get greater access and opportunities. So the key here is about outreach, and that's what we talked to you all from the very beginning as well, is about what the community's values are, what their needs and vision is. We're very much in the process, and the one benefit of doing these site-specific plans with the system-wide master plan has been the ability to conduct multiple meetings that are both combined and customized for each of these sites as well. I know some of you have been there most recently when we had the taco truck meetings as well, and they were really, really well attended too. And I know it was only because of the content of my presentation and had nothing to do with the tacos. But just some quick recap for the audience here as well. Please, 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 please bookmark this site, planvistaparks.com. Everything we do going forward as well, the meetings, the findings will all be here. You have open-ended comment boxes to share input at any time, and we've got a lot of people sharing that as well. So please continue doing so. These are the summaries of just the key milestones thus far. We've, from the kickoff in February, have had system-wide meetings. We've had specific meetings just with the youth that were very well attended. We had multiple site-specific meetings, both in the initial kickoff window as well as in May. We came back in July, specific for the wave as well. And then as we speak in the next couple of months, we're going to have a community-wide statistically valid survey just for Vista residents and a complimentary online-only survey that can be open to all as well for those that don't get randomly chosen in the statistically valid survey. So we're going to obviously continue working with the staff to get the word out as well. But these are the things we've done so far. And the reason the surveys are done later is so that the input we hear from the community and the stakeholders and any other input you all may have for us can be incorporated into the survey questions. So that's why this sequencing as well, and these will all be done before the year is over. So with that, a quick snapshot of some of the visuals. You can see the top right with the youth groups as well, and they were really engaged. We had a lot of inputs for site-specific work with people putting sticky notes and writing to a whole bunch of ideas based on different sites as well. This was, again, the other one that we did in May as well, with site-specific information too. And some of the key findings from these were based on live polling through Mentimeter. It is not scientific. It's simply a reflection of who showed up. But we did have a lot of people show up. The regularly used amenities, as you can see, hiking, biking trails in blue was number 1. Moonlight Amphitheater was number 2 in red. And open spaces was number 3 in yellow, closely followed by playgrounds, sports fields, and sports courts, all tied together as well in green, purple, and brown. 3 largest barriers as well, a lot of it, what prevents people from using them more often as well, busy, restrooms, shade structures, lack of amenities people want were all the top priorities that they mentioned, that these are some of the reasons why we don't. We can address the fact that they may be busy binge watching something on Netflix, but other than that, the other pieces this plan can certainly help address. Amenities they're interested in, lighting came up a lot as well. If you see the one on the extreme left, that's pretty high as well. Arts and cultural spaces, dog parks as well, sports courts. We had a lot of people speak about pickleball as well. We had people talk about playgrounds and sports fields in general. So a wide variety of needs that we heard from the input. And again, in terms of improvements too, a lot of it was taking care of what we have, building on them as well, more trails, connectivity, additional lighting, additional restrooms, were more of the amenities that we heard about too. This isn't a surprise. We're hearing more and more of those as well as we go forward. Shade, lighting, restrooms continue to come up as amenities that people are really interested in addition to the typical sports courts, playgrounds, etc. as well. Last piece here, and this is encouraging and an opportunity as we look at the overall quality of the department. The majority of them said this was good. A few said excellent. A couple of them said poor. So our opportunity is going to continue being, how do we go from good to great? What is it that we can continue investing in the system, in the quality of the experiences? So 5 years from now, when you update the plan and you ask people, they look at the department and more people say excellent compared to even good. How we get there, I'm going to have Doug speak a little bit about the park and facility assessment and share some of his findings.
Great. Thank you, Neely. Good to be here tonight. What we are tasked with, at least initially in this project, is assessing all of your parks and facilities and seeing the condition they're in. So we've looked at all of the parks in your city. This is just a list of all the ones we've looked at so far with the acreage. We've created a overall map so we kind of get an idea. You can see how they fit. Obviously, we have a cluster of parks there close to the middle center and then some outliers. So that's going to be a big factor as we move forward and we find out where we want to do maybe new parks or where improvements need to happen. So we have all that in our document. Then the big thing we've done is gone through all the parks with a GIS device, a geographical information system, and documented everything that you have, whether it's a bench, a trash can, a backstop, a playground, the condition it's in. That's all in a large GIS database now and allows us to then, as we move forward with this plan and find out what the community would like to see, we know what we have already, where we need to do the improvements, and how that can work. That data is then handed over to the city to put into your GIS system, so as things get improved in the parks over the years, you can update that, and you always kind of have a good idea of where and the condition of things you have in your parks. We then looked at all the parks, and we rate them in 4 different areas: access and connectivity, condition and functionality, safety and comfort, and maintenance on a scale of 1 to 5. So great being 4 to 5, good 3, fair 2, and poor 0 to 1. This is a combination of all of those 4 factors into just an overall park score. There was a couple that we hadn't quite finished yet before this presentation, but they're actually done now. So those are the to be determined ones. So you can see you've got some parks in there, obviously Paula Vista being relatively new as a 3. You've got some parks down there in the ones that are a little older. But this is really just kind of not necessarily a judging on the park, it's just where we are today. So as we look at what improvements need to happen, where they need to happen, this will give us a good idea of where we need to go with those improvements. I'm going to turn this over to Dennis with Aquatic Design Group to talk about the Wave Water Park.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, when we take a look at the Wave Water Park, the Wave Aquatic Center, something that was built 30 years ago, this has really been an example for aquatics for municipalities, not only in California, but the Southwest for many, many years. This has been a real example of what can be done, and it's been remarkable to see how it's lasted through the years. As we go through our summary of findings, we had identified in our needs assessment the code compliance issues, maintenance operations issues, or opportunities for enhancement, and then what the costs related to those are. If we summarize these, we took a look at the locker rooms, where the locker rooms are still compliant in terms of our number of fixture counts, but we do have aging infrastructure. We also have locker room areas, bathhouse areas that aren't up with the current standards in terms of things like all gender bathrooms or family changing areas where a mother can take a son or a father could take a daughter, that they don't really want them going into gender specific bathrooms by themselves. So the opportunity to upgrade those were things that were really outstanding to the locker rooms. With regards to the pool deck, probably the piece that's shown the most wear is the pool decks around the pools themselves, especially the lower deck area. Those are the deck areas adjacent to the pools. And what we found are decks that have worn over time from chemicals, from salt intrusion. We've got slippery issues. We've got differential movements and things like that. that are really areas that are showing probably the biggest wear of all of the aquatics. The pool finishes is another area where we're starting to see wear. That is a cementitious product. The other thing that we would want you to be aware of is that if we were to replace the decks, oftentimes the construction project replacing the decks is going to cause damage to the plaster or further damage to the plaster. So if we start planning to replace decks, we really have to bring that plaster finish of the adjacent pool as part of that project. Also taking a look at the water slide tower. Again, over 30 years, there's been a lot of maintenance and upkeep that's been done, and the tower was recently rebuilt. But what we are seeing is the fiberglass flumes, the gel coats are wearing and due to be refurbished. Also some of the support slides and the pumps and things that support that. One of the things that's happened to water slides since this was built 30 years ago is water slides are now classified by the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, DOSH, as an amusement ride, much like a roller coaster. So annual inspections by them and safety inspections by them are now required on an annual basis. The Flow Rider, again, this was one of the very first flow riders installed in the United States, and again has been used for a model hundreds of times across the country. But as one of the original ones, there have been numerous changes to the Flow Rider, ways to make it a little bit safer, make it easier to maintain. So those are opportunities for us, as well as just looking at the island and what we could have for modern amenities that might attract more users throughout the year. So in summary, again, we've got a facility that's 30 years old, but is in remarkably good shape for the age. The level of maintenance and upkeep is something that is really exemplary for people to look at. But in looking at that, we do see things that are starting to age, and breaking down the cost estimates that we have. If we start to look at it, we've given you a breakdown here of order of magnitude, what a project might be in terms of budgeting for various items, along with the expected timeline that might affect to the facility itself. So for example, if we were replacing decks throughout the property, then we would be looking at a project somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 to $2.5 million, and it'd be a project that would be running somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 4 to 5 months for time. And we've broken this down from the refinishes of the pools to the water slide supports, the Flow Rider and what upgrades we might make to the Flow Rider or replacement of the Flow Rider, security options that we have and the others, and then break this down that if we were doing an overall modernization to the facility, we could be looking somewhere in that $6 to plus $1 million range to bring it up to current standards. And then this is a breakdown of the needs assessment for line items, almost a grocery list, if you will, where if you wanted to break it down to individual items and maybe take a look at how that might affect a budget, we've given you a breakdown to do that as well. With that, I'll turn it back over to Nilay.
14 minutes for the last slide, Mayor. Here we are. So just as we think about this, I already mentioned the survey aspects, the statistically valid and the online surveys will be going out. If you do get the statistically valid survey, which is randomly mailed, please do take it as well. It is really, really important. For those that don't, if you have a chance, go to the website. You'll have access to the online survey. We are assessing the programs as we speak, and the site-specific and the aquatic information that we have will also be crafted into a report that staff can then react to. Using all that information, we will then craft your level of service inventory. What do you have by every asset type, by every park type, not just that the city provides, but that the residents have access to, and then mapped onto equity maps to show where there might be gaps in different parts of the city for what kind of amenities, and thus how the individual park plans could help address those. So those are the next 4 to 5 months in terms of the public input, level of service, and equity mapping. And just a reminder again for PlanVistaParks.com to continue engaging with us and the community through that. With that, these are just a couple of samples. This is what the equity maps would look like when they are mapped specifically for Vista for every amenity. And you can see on one hand where there are overlaps, on the other map where there are gaps, and the kind of survey results that will help the council make more informed decisions based on your constituents' input. This is what the statistically valid survey will show you in terms of high, medium, and low priorities for investment. So that's what is to come. And with that, we're happy to turn it over for questions and comments.
Very good. And before we get to that, we're going to hear from August Slivnik. Do we have any others?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members.
Welcome.
I just wanted to thank you guys. The process of going through all this and the other stuff that we've gone through has been amazing. It's nice to see how receptive all of you are and how the public is engaging in this. It's also really nice to see young people here, even though we might not see them again, but hopefully they understand that this is for them. You know, we have a shortened time span, and they have a much longer lifespan, hopefully, that they can enjoy all these parks. Having these as a site-specific map, because each park is different, and being able to engage with them and with the people that came to the meetings has been wonderful. So just, again, I wanted to thank you guys for all this.
Thank you very much. Carol Jeffries.
Hi, I've been to a lot of the park meetings and I've been to city council meetings and watched them online and stuff. I've heard a lot from a lot of pickleballers. They're very vociferous, but you know, our city is a birthplace, one of the birthplaces of skateboarding, and we don't hear a lot about it, and it's discounted a lot. It's pushed aside that it's not mainstream, but it's in the Olympics now, and. My husband grew up skating here, and he goes to the skate parks once in a while, and he feels like he has to bring a leaf blower with him because it's really dangerous for there to be any debris on the skate park, and it's always a mess, and it needs a little more attention, and I also feel like we just need more facilities for that, and it's always been kind of a stepchild, I feel like, for our Parks and Rec department. So I'm just here to advocate for more skate park facilities and more attention to them. Thanks.
Thank you, and we'll close the opportunity for public comment at this time, and they don't yet see a speaker. I'm sure there will be one. There we go. But I'm going to ask the first question. Have we built in the depreciation of the items at the Wave Water Park? This is for Mr. Conley. Are we budgeting for depreciation for all these items?
We have budgeted for depreciation, but not to the level of deterioration that's currently facing us with some of the Waves facilities.
So what kind of funds do we have available to replace? Because we can't use our park fund to repair or replace items.
No,
only
so
for
the
new
council approved a maintenance program earlier this year that's going to rely on some of our redevelopment funding to handle a number of maintenance projects. Some of the Wave improvements are in there. Some of them are not. What we intend to do from the staff side is bring the Wave to you for discussion around the beginning of next year, once this is all complete and we've gotten the public input back, and talk about the Wave specifically about what do we want to do with that facility in the future? How do we want to maintain everything that's there and continue to operate it as is, or do we want to make some changes? And we'll have more information to make that informed decision, hopefully around the beginning of the year.
It sounds like we need to pretty much immediately adopt a business plan that includes the depreciation of all of the serialized items of equipment. I mean,
I would totally agree with you if we intend to keep all of those items operational.
yeah, I mean, we don't have $16.5
But I think we
million.
need to talk about what we want to keep
Yeah,
and what we want to not keep, and that's the conversation that we're going to bring forward.
very good. Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking forward to having a discussion about the Wave. I think it is unique, and I appreciate that our survey of it found that it's an asset that could be enhanced, but at what cost, I think, is a great question. I'm happy to see all the youth here as well. I always love to hear from folks that go to our local schools about what they would like to see our community look like, because this is your community to enjoy. And I also see a lot of stakeholders here tonight, neighbors and many folks who've been regularly coming to these meetings. I think we've had a great turnout for our specific site community meetings. And so I just wanted to thank the team for that. I know that our council put a lot of emphasis on that community outreach. And so being at this stage in the planning process, knowing that the community outreach is going so well makes me really confident for some of the more formal and scientific practices that we're going to be moving forward with, which, I appreciate your methodology and expertise. But I did notice that from the presentation, it didn't look like our new parks were listed in some of these survey prompts. So we have three sites that have been designated as parkland, and I didn't see those really mapped out. Those I think are important. We've had site-specific meetings for those. How are they going to be incorporated compared to the sites that are already developed?
Yeah, great question. So the assessment we did right now, just existing parks, just knowing what the prioritization is, if there is any, to bring them up to a better standard. And so we are, as part of this contract, going to do site-specific plans for these other 3 new parks that you'd mentioned. So the next steps will be, taking the survey results and forming that into the higher level concept design plans that we'll be bringing back as part of this whole process.
So just to be clear, the multiple new park sites that have not been developed but are designated as parkland, and we have, as the council, have had an intention to develop that as parkland, that's included in the statistically reliable survey?
Correct.
Yes? Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. That wasn't clear. I appreciate that. Because I do think that one should inform the other. And what are we doing to ensure that those sites are, I guess I want to see how the neighbors in those sites, as they're not developed at all yet, have an opportunity to provide significant input, right? Are we changing the way that the survey is presented to someone based on their proximity to a park, or is the same survey going out to every person?
So I think for the validity of a statistical process, we cannot tailor who we send it to. It has to be randomly and anonymously sent just to the entire city. To complement that, however, right, just like the site meetings we did in public, we will also have the online survey which can be sent, and in the statistically valid survey, along with questions for the entire system, we will have site-specific questions as well, right? So for 3 of the new sites, let's just say Courthouse, for example, and we can list the options that are there and let the community members prioritize what they would like to see. We can then come back and say, could this even fit on this site? Mm-hmm. And the beauty of the process that you all have taken forth with doing all these together is that they can be looked at as an entire system where not everything has to go on just one site. As long as they're accessible, that's going to be valuable. So that's how we will ensure that those that are most impacted have a say without compromising the reliability of the statistically valid process.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that this is an opportunity for someone to be able to come to a decision about what they would like to see, not only in that specific site, but all of the sites, right? Because we can't put every amenity on one site. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And when it comes to the different amenities, we have gotten some feedback of what people would like to see. So I just took a couple of notes that I wanted to remark on. Hiking, right, being a top activity nationally. And you made a comment that some of these activities people aren't necessarily doing in Vista, but they might love to hike, go somewhere else to go hiking when maybe there can be more hiking and trail opportunities for them here. I also had questions about some of the improvements that folks want to see and making sure that we're understanding what people are asking for. So there were a couple things, arts and cultural spaces, infrastructure like lighting, safety and security measures. Do we have more clear definitions of what is meant by arts and cultural spaces? Because when I think of the moonlight, right? I think of murals. I think of our flag sculptures that are around town. So what do we mean by that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and the answer is all of it.
Okay.
Depending on who's responding, they certainly see different interpretations of what they would like to see. What I've typically found is, especially with the online survey, because we also leave options for open-ended comments, it gives people a chance to further qualify what they would interpret in some of those as well. So this is an early stage thing. I think the value of that initial input is that we will now specifically ask about more arts and culture style options in the statistically valid survey to better narrow down to get a sense, not just facility-wise, but also programmatically. What might be special events, cultural events, something else that people would like to see in your existing spaces.
Right, and being able to use our various spaces to do more, right, of that cultural expression. And then I had a question about the safety and security measures. It seemed like infrastructure and safety and security are part of a whole conversation. So there were suggestions related to lighting. What other safety measures are people looking for?
So I'm going to have Doug speak more to that as well. But we've seen in agencies with security cameras, with simple line of sight, within some places just activating as well. We're in Coronado and they've got partial staffing at a skate park too. So it's the larger gamut. From a design standpoint, I'll let you speak more to that.
So what we're looking at, and that's one of the things we rated on our park assessments, view into the park. So if you have tall shrubs where people don't feel safe walking in, restroom buildings that are in the back corner somewhere, parking lots that aren't lit well, access points, is there more than one access point? So those are all the things that, if we have time, later on we'll break down the details of our assessment, and then we match those up with what the community has already told us and what they tell us in the survey, and then we'll go to those parks and say, hey, how do we make this park? It's got a 1.2 rating out of 5 for safety. How do we make that safer park? What are the things we need to do? So that's the reason for that rating, and that's what we're going to be asking them in these questions.
So depending on, I appreciate the scoring, right? Depending on how the score looks and what the conditions are at that park, we might come up with a variety of reasons.
Yes.
A variety of ways to implement safety and security there. And one of the ways that you mentioned kind of goes back to that arts and culture, right? And that's, you mentioned activating the parks. And I kind of see this in my nearest park, which is Breeze Hill Park. I went there recently after dark with my dog, and we were kind of walking around the neighborhood anyhow, and we ended up at the park. And I think the park was technically closed, but families were still using the park because it was finally cool enough out to be able to enjoy it. And I just could see that some people, people were keeping to themselves, right? There wasn't like during the daytime where you see some of the park being like, oh, hello, right? So I think that at night when people want to use our facilities, or in the evening when people walk our infrastructure, we have to wonder, how do people feel secure? And the fact that there were a lot of families there made me feel comfortable walking into the park, right? So are there specific things that we can do to activate a park? Is it just making it more free for people to enter? You're kind of describing an environment where no one feels really trapped in, right? People can kind of come and go freely. What are some ways that we can activate the parks?
There's an acronym that we use that we work with, and some of you probably, it's called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, which has got 5 different components in how the park is designed. So we look at all of these with that as well. And so what we'll do, and as you mentioned too, parks that aren't very active don't feel safe, because people come to the parks in those situations that probably shouldn't be there, you'd like to have there. So activities, whether it's a sport court, whether it's some type of activity that groups want to come do, I won't say the P word, but pickleball. But so those are the things we'll look at. So if we have a park that's just very vacant, it's a beautiful setting, but sometimes that doesn't feel very safe.
Okay.
Because you don't have a lot of activities. So programming, whether it's through the Parks, the Recreation Department, programming or events there, or whether it's putting in facilities that will will encourage people to come use that facility, whether it's a nice big playground, things like that. I mean, Paula Vista, beautiful, amazing site, and people come there because so you feel safe because it's lit well, it's got nice equipment, there's people around, you feel safe. That's just probably a good example of one that feels safe and other ones that don't. So,
Right.
and that's why that's our component on this whole team is really that designing parks for 40 years. So we bring that expertise to make sure that your parks, what you have already, what you're putting in, which this is very unique. You all have 4 sites that we're going to be designing as well as this stuff, is going to be something that's going to be serving this community. So
Wonderful. So I have a sense now of where we can go to make our parks safer and for people to feel more comfortable using them. And I think that that's going to be a really big part of future discussions, right? Getting all of that feedback on what design-wise can be improved, right? Maybe it's just putting up a little bit of fencing, right? Maybe it's trimming back a little bit of overgrowth, right, in terms of landscaping. I'm sure there's a lot of things we can do, common sense solutions to make our park safer. But since that was one of the top issues, I want to definitely highlight that. And then we can also talk about personnel, right, and how the city is ensuring safety through law enforcement and through code enforcement and through the use of our park rangers. And so I think that this will all be part of a more robust discussion. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the community has to say about safety in the parks with the survey. And I don't think I have any further questions. It was really just wanting to know, how are we looking forward to creating more vibrant spaces for our community. And I'll touch on the wave just really quick. I just think that the wave can use more activation as well. I look at the wave as this huge opportunity, right, for us to develop more expansive programs. I think that there's even an opportunity for us to bring in different vendors and have even evening, 21 plus events, right, where we have alcohol permitted on site and a lazy river. I think that with safety measures included could be something that's a very attractive, amenity and very entertaining. I know that there's a lot that would go into that, but I've had multiple people approach me and say, hey, is the wave, would you ever have an evening event, right, for adults at the wave? And I don't know what we would have to do to program it that way, but I can see us kind of making more use out of that asset if we have a little bit more programming. It kind of reminds me of the Moonlight and how we have increasingly activated the Moonlight, and now we're doing this summer concert series. And, it's just something a little bit additional to the programs that already exist, but doing something a little bit different might help us get a little bit more out of that asset, but I think we would need some partnership with that. So that's just my thought with the wave. I feel like it's 30 years, right, is a long time for some of these structures. And we might have to wonder, are we going to keep all of these structures? What needs to go? What can we let go of while still keeping an impressive amenity? Otherwise, I just say we need to program it a little bit more. So that's my thought on the wave, and thank you so much for all the work that y'all put into this. Thank you to the public for all of your comments. There's been so many emails and so many contributions online for our parks master plan that this is just going to be awesome. Once we wrap it in a bow and present it to the community, it'll be great. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you. Real quick, so I saw Bub Williamson has a 3.13 rating, and we just spent a tremendous amount of effort on that park. So I was just curious as to how it received, in my mind, such a low score for such a beautiful space.
the score you're looking at on that particular chart is a combination of all 4 of those categories. We break it down into maintenance and well, the categories are there. So that some of the scores may be higher that related to amenities or new amenities. And quite honestly, a 3 to 3.5 is actually a really good score when you're combining all four scoring categories. So if you want to get into the weeds on it, we can later on. I mean,
We don't need to right now,
yeah,
but
not
it is
tonight,
the
but yeah.
highest rated park on here. So I was just curious
Yeah.
as the 3.13.
Yeah, it is. And most of the cities we're working with now, the ratings are anywhere between the high 1s to the 2.5s. So anything over 3 is really a great park. So.
Excellent, thank you. As far as the survey is concerned, I was under the understanding it would be out in August. And so what was the time frame on that again?
For the statistically valid survey,
Yes.
it will probably be launched sometime next month.
Okay.
And they will collect responses till people keep sending them back. Usually it takes about 6 to 8 weeks from the time they're mailed out. For a sample, for a city our size, 450 plus would be a statistically reliable sample. What we will ensure is a 95% level of confidence and about a 5% margin of error. So you basically know the results are going to be plus or minus 5% for what you're going to get back from the statistically valid survey.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Pacheco, do you know how many basketball courts we have in Vista offhand? I'm going to hit you with a few of these, just so you know. So if you're not prepared, actually, let me rephrase it. I don't want to say you're not prepared. If you don't have it in front of you, I understand.
I'm looking to Rob Anderson because he might actually know that.
Rob, do you know? I'll invite you down here if you have any of the answers to these questions. I got a few of them for you, though. So it's basketball, soccer, pickleball, and baseball fields.
Hi, good evening, Council. As far as basketball courts, we have 2 full courts at Bringle Terrace. We have 2 courts, they're not full-size, they're more of a mini court at Breeze Hill. And then we have Luz Duran has more of a mini-size full court, as well as Thibodeau. And then at Shadow Ridge, we have a half court. And at South Buena Vista Park, we have a half court. And then we have, at Linda Rhodes, there are 4 courts out there that are on the asphalt.
What about soccer fields?
So as far as true soccer fields, we have the 2 at the sports park. We have Luz Duran, and then we've got the small court at Linda Rhodes. We have several of our parks have multi-use. As an example, Breeze Hill can be used as soccer as well, but it's not designated just for soccer.
And then pickleball courts. I know we just added, so we're going to be adding more. We kept the 2 over for the time being, but what does that bring our total to?
So we'll have 12 at Bringle, and then we'll still have the existing 4 at Thibodeau for now.
And so based on the information received, we should have around 20 for the population size that we have. Is that correct? As far as what I was looking at here, so every 5,000 residents, it's saying that we should have a pickleball court. Is that accurate from what I saw?
So every standard is going to be customized to each city.
Okay.
Right? So that's one example. What we don't know is still the community input. So depending on what we get back, we will adapt and adjust that as well. So for some places, yes, that may be adequate. For others, it may not be. And it also accounts for who else is already providing those within a certain vicinity, both in your geography and right bordering you. So once we have those and the rings that you saw on the maps, that can then help better define how many more or what a standard could look like.
Perfect. I promise you there's a reason I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, great questions.
Softball fields, how many do we have?
So we have, for youth, we have the Breeze Hill has 2. Buena Vista Park, we have 3. And I'm trying to think about, that's it.
What about baseball fields?
So true baseball fields, we just have the sports park. So if you're including a baseball field to include just mounds, we have the 2 Little League fields at the sports park, and then we have the large juniors field there.
So the reason I ask about all of these spaces, those are the 5 things that I get asked about probably the most.
Absolutely.
On slide 29, it was identified as baseball fields, but those are softball fields. And so I just wanted to be accurate in the representation because we don't have enough baseball fields. I don't think we have enough basketball courts. I don't think we have enough soccer fields or pickleball courts or even softball. So when we're looking at this information, it's just important because I can tell you in my district, the number one thing that people ask for outside of pickleball are baseball fields. And I know we don't have enough. So I'd really like to see if there's a way that we can incorporate those into the data that we're using and just make sure that we're not counting softball fields as baseball fields. Those are all my questions for you, Rob. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you.
And then for hiking trails in Vista, are we doing any active campaigns to let people know like about Buena Vista Trail or South Buena Vista and other areas that we have in the city?
I mean, we list, at the back of our Vista, kind of shows like all the amenities for the city. So that's kind of there. Our website has a lot of information about the trails. I can't remember like an actual social media campaign for it, but
We should all work on that as a council. Okay, and then the last question I have for you, because the wave will be coming up in the future, and I know that it's going to be probably a long discussion. What kind of revenue do we generate there versus losses each year?
yeah, I'd have to kind of get the numbers back to you just after this. It takes a while for us to kind of close out the books from just, we just had gonna have our last weekend this weekend. So we can definitely give you an update on that.
Awesome. City Manager, I was just about to look down your way as I see you.
Mike, we have numbers from last year, don't we? How did we do last year?
So I think one of the issues we've kind of had over the years is the way the fiscal year just kind of cuts our summer right in half. So it's hard to kind of tell you the true number of like a summer. And then COVID's just been a weird, kind of animal. So this is something kind of been talking to finance about trying to paint a better picture. And I think with this needs assessment, that's one of the things we really want to kind of paint the picture of what true costs are. And I think the way it looks like on our fiscal year budget every year, it's hard to kind of tell. I know we have our cost recovery and we have our subsidized model, but it's just, we haven't really done a good job of like showing it per a whole summer season.
It was
but I
about
can definitely get back to you.
$500,000.
It's somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million on average
In the red or profit? No,
in the red.
Yeah.
We've not made a profit.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that, and I think the Deputy Mayor brought up a great point, if we decide to invest literally millions and millions of dollars in trying to rejuvenate the wave, we need to be exploring other ideas and options to bring in additional revenue, because I can tell you all where I grew up, and I've mentioned it before, we had 3 pools where I was growing up all throughout the city. All 3 of them are gone because the cost and maintenance that goes into trying to make sure that they can be in the proper condition for it to be safe is extremely expensive. So I would definitely be open to and explore those ideas and hope that we can have some that come up if we're going to make that type of investment. But I just want to say, Nilay and the team and Mike, I appreciate all of your work on this. I'm looking forward to the totality of this update when it comes through in a larger discussion between our council. But I know that there's been a lot of hard work, and I appreciate everybody showing up and participating. Those are all my questions for now.
Councilmember Contreras.
All right, thanks. Just a quick question. When we're looking at just the 49% of folks in Vista are within 10 minutes of a park, are we going to have a geographic representation of that as well, like where we have park deserts?
Yes. So the maps that you saw, that was an example for amenities. We'll also have that for parks. So we're going to have it by also park types, so small mini parks or neighborhood parks or a Brangle Terrace and the footprint it has as well. So you will see that by every park type too, in order to understand, like you said, park deserts or amenity gaps or overlaps too.
Okay.
To Councilmember O'Donnell's point as well, we could see where maybe from a quantity standpoint, certain amenities would be met, but from an equity of access and distribution standpoint, they may not, right? So that's why we're looking at all of these and holistically to get you a sense, acreage and amenity-wise, how much do you have, what condition is it in, and where is it located? The triangulation of all of that can then help you make decisions for how best to act upon all of those. Does that answer your question?
It does. And, also looking at the fact that some folks are, wanting to see more public restrooms and more shade and more light. Will those elements come forward in that type of geographic representation as well?
No, so we don't map in terms of standards. There isn't a standard to say these many restrooms per park or place, et cetera, as well. But as they're looking at site-specific plans, they will certainly be incorporating those as well based on the needs. Also, what you've seen so far is a completely unscientific representation of only those that showed up at the public meetings. So this may very well be the top priorities, or it may not be. We have no way of telling you just yet, right? So once that does come back, at that point, by all means, if that continues to be a high priority, then both through the system-wide and the site-specific input, we would look at that. Just not have a recommended standard, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that I brought up thank you so much. The lighting is a huge issue. And now that we're moving forward with solar lights, I really want us to try and have maybe from staff or from the public, like recommended areas in our parks that need more lighting so that we could quantify how many lights we need. I think from there, then we can start having conversations about budgets. I'm really hoping that these solar lights do work. And for example, one of the things that I want to see come out of this Parks Master Plan exercise, a great exercise, a $350,000 exercise, right? So I want to make sure that we get a lot of good information from it. Which parks have limited hours of operation because of lighting? And for example, I think Councilmember O'Donnell asked a good question about the number of fields. Well, some of those fields can't be used, when the sun goes down. And Linda Rhodes happens to be one of those fields where we have a soccer field. It may not be standard size, but it's a pretty good field, and we can't utilize it past sunset, right? So that's definitely an opportunity. And you probably can't use, I would garner that you can't use the solar lights there because you probably would have to have some kind of special light to produce enough light to be able to utilize that into, after hours. But I would be curious to just have a ballpark figure of, how much we're looking in additional lighting between solar lights and higher utilization of some of the parks that, it's there, the potential's there, but we haven't been able to unlock that potential. Looking at the park assessment, so can you just remind me, who is it that actually, is this from the public or is this from the consultants?
This is from us. One of our staff members is a 30-year park planner for the city of Riverside who's retired, also park superintendent for 5 years. He goes out and personally assesses everything. So it's a person who's been doing this for his whole career. So that's who does the assessment. So he's looking at it in those 4 factors.
Okay, and the ones that say TBD, is there a timeline for those?
They're done. When we had to get this report to everybody a week ago, we were just wrapping up those parks. They're actually already completed. So I have those already in my current spreadsheet.
Okay,
and we do have a spreadsheet that shows the quantities of everything, whether
I was
it's
going to
lighted or not.
ask, yeah, I want to be, I'm someone who really, these scores are great, it has some kind of standard. However, I really want to get into a little bit more detail. So certainly I expect that to be coming to my inbox anytime now. And I think, when we look at our skate park, there's a lot of concern with the skate parks, especially even being able to utilize the restroom there and have enough shade. I know we've made strides towards creating some more shade, but it definitely is not enough. And I really appreciate the comment about, this is a city with a history of skateboarding. So I think there's probably a little bit more that we can do to honor that history and maybe be able to get some additional funding from some of these foundations that are from some pretty big skateboarders. Okay, question about the wave season. What's the season from what date to what date?
Memorial Day to Labor Day. Actually, this weekend, it's like the weekend after Labor Day. This weekend is our last weekend, but we actually go full weeks up until the first week of August. So I'm saying we're open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, but really that's not including the last 3 weeks of August during the week, only the first week of August, and then we go to weekends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so where does that leave the pools? So does that mean that the public doesn't have access to the pools on a daily basis?
Correct. Right now, the only access there is the swim teams are using the and the water polo teams. So it's just sports, and we also do swim lessons.
Yeah. So I've had this comment in the past. I mean, we continue. This is unfortunately the coolest it will ever be. We are in climate crisis with climate change accelerating and hitting certain tipping points. So we can expect that it's going to be a lot hotter. But I don't think that we're preparing for that. And I think that the wave is a critical piece of infrastructure to help folks cool down. I think that we have issues with accessibility there at a price point. Obviously, we have issues with maintenance. We've done the best that we can. And again, for a 30-year-old facility, we're, doing the best that we can. However, as we have conversations about the wave, I think having public access to those pools is going to become more and more and more important. The other features of the wave are like cherry on top, right? But I think looking at the functionality of why people may need to be able to access more public pools in the future, I want to see us actually change the way our season looks. I think we're closing way too early. I mean, it's super hot right now. And to think that we're only going to be open on a daily basis for a little bit more time, it's really concerning to me. And I've had this comment before, so I don't know what it is that we need to do from a council authority perspective to finally change the season and make it longer. But I think that we need to do that. So, city manager, what's the best course of action so that we can have a full conversation about the season, how much it costs to have employees there? And
We'll bring you all that when we have the wave discussion.
Okay,
That'll be
perfect.
part of it.
Perfect. I need that to be addressed in a real holistic way, including what the temperatures are for the year. And I think that temperatures should be guiding us a little bit more than they are now to determine how long our season should be. And if we take that into consideration, seeing that we haven't made money and we might actually need to subsidize the wave a little bit more to ensure that we have a lot of public access to these pools, curious to see, having a longer season, what that would look like. I mean, when we added another show to the Moonlight, we saw a lot of additional revenue, right? Is that correct? I feel like that's a correct statement.
That's correct.
Yeah, so, when we're looking at public amenities, we do have to take this approach, and I think, Mayor, you've brought this up, and I totally agree with you, that if this were a private company, what other new features would we be seeing? I would love, the footprint of the wave is significant, and we're not utilizing it to its full potential yet. I think we can get there. I think it's going to be a long conversation. It's going to be expensive. We can go for grant funding. We can phase it in. But some of the most critical infrastructure for me is the pool side, to ensure that we have a lot more public access and a lot more days where that's open for the public, including later into the day. So anyways, I'm just like seriously concerned with extreme heat. We already don't have enough cool zones, and I would love to see that folded into this public amenities conversation. You know, the little house at Luz Duran Park, like at any point, could that be a cool zone? Could the Linda Road Center be a cool zone? That is also something I think needs to be mapped out in this equity perspective of where are the cool zones for the populations? And we need to be a little bit more strategic with that, whether we go off of the current system that the county has, or we create our own. These are things that we need to do to meet the challenge of our residents, a lot of folks not having AC and needing to find shade. So anyways, some questions and comments that I have about that. Also, curious to see if bike parking is going to be wrapped into this conversation about the parks and where I can expect to see that come up. Because I know on council, we have had several council members concerned that there is no bike parking because it's still against our municipal code, right? I don't think we've updated.
No, we will address bike parking as part of the needs analysis.
Okay, and when can we expect to update our municipal code to make it not illegal anymore?
Yeah, we don't have a restriction on bike parking per se. It's
But
just
the use of the bike.
right, the use of the bike on the sidewalk. So we'll put bike parking in the appropriate locations, and if we have to adjust the code to address that, we will, but I don't think we're going to have to.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I think, when I go to Luz Duran Park and I take my bike, I don't have anywhere to put it, so I go to play basketball there. The new paint is awesome. Accidentally got stuck on a 5v5 and missed all my shots, so I'm really sorry to my team that we lost, but it took us a long time just to get to 15 points. So it was a great game, but I haven't had a call back from them, so. But anyways, if I see you all at Luz Duran Park, help me out. I'm trying to get my shot a little bit better. I stopped playing basketball when I was in high school, and I went, full into soccer, but basketball is really fun. So I definitely think we need more courts, especially at night. When I got stuck on this 5v5, I had been practicing early on, and then a bunch of folks started coming as the sun was going down, right? So we have to also think about having enough facilities that match when people are off of work, and it's a little bit cooler, right? I mean, there's like people waiting for our game to just finish, and I was like, I'm so sorry, we're terrible. This 15-point thing's taking forever. But there's a lot of people waiting to play, and there's only one court. So anyways, just a little side story. The Wave Water Park, again, I had this question. So we require on an annual basis now safety inspections, and those are happening. Since when have those been happening?
I don't know if Dennis would know that off the top of his head. You know how long Dosh has been requiring? Oh, Huntington's even here. Do you know how long? You want to come up? Okay, sorry I didn't recognize Huntington is in the audience here, who's been at the Wave for a long time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No problem. We've been required to have DOSH inspections since the beginning of the park. DOSH has been around since 1993. We've been open since 1994.
Okay, and we have passed all our inspections.
Every year.
That's probably why I haven't heard anything bad. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. And again, like it was underscored before, this park being 30 years old, it's an incredible testament to how you're maintaining it. But there's some stuff that goes beyond just regular maintenance. So thank you again. I appreciate that. Okay. I think that may bring me to the end of one last thing. You know what I would love to see is this park assessment, the scoring Okay, first of all, once we have the whole complete thing, I would love for folks in the community to have the ability to look at the score and say how they would improve it. So, looking at these categories, right? Like, how can we get this park that's at a 3 to a 5, a 4 or 5? Is that something that's possible to incorporate into this exercise for the park master plan? Is it going to cost us more money?
No. No. The next step in this is to, well, we'll do the survey, obviously. We'll find out what the people want. And then we start to put together a list of elements for each park and where we think they fit the best. Based on what the assessment was. So we have a low assessment score. We want to attack that first. And we'll create a list of items for each park that we will then present to the public. So they'll be able to come in and say, here's the 10 things we're looking at. Here's the general cost it's going to be. Are these the things that you really feel are important, or are things we're missing?
Okay.
So we'll have those. And the site-specific plans will actually have concept plans for that. For the existing parks, we'll have a site map with the elements listed that we're thinking of improving.
So
they'll have a chance for input at that
Let me
point.
see if I'm understanding this correctly. Okay, so you have your baseline score for how the parks are now. You are going to do the exercise of how can we make this to 4 or 5?
Yes.
Site specific. You're going to present that to the public and then get their feedback that
Yes.
way.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm super excited to see that. And I think that's all from me. Thanks.
I was going to clarify, we're not doing a site master plan for every single park. We will have a list of items that are going to be improved there, so. yeah,
Okay.
And Councilmember, if there are lighting issues that are not fully addressed in the response that we get back from the consultant's report, we can always add those as part of the discussion item when this is brought back to council.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'm thinking, maybe the Conservancy Trail could use some more lighting or different things like that. All right, well, thank you all.
Mr. Bott, you're going to put a first-class stamp on a letter with a internet link and mail it to people?
It's going to be an independent firm called ETC Institute.
Are they going to put a stamp on a letter with a
They
link?
will, yes.
Please tell them not to do that.
Okay.
That's what I do professionally. No one is going to type in http://www.vistasurvey/ the unique identifier for this. It's not going to happen. Just email it to them or text it to them. Let's see. I don't think, looking at our young audience here, they're likely to transpose an internet address for a survey. But if you texted it to them, they might just answer you.
Agreed.
So
Yeah,
let's
what
have
we
a
have been doing-
conversation about that. But that's a little bit crazy. So please stop that.
Yeah.
Do like a QR code as well?
Exactly. We've been using QR codes.
But why would you? It's extremely expensive to send hard mail. Why would you not start off with telephone, text, and email as a way to reach? How many respondents are we looking for here? 400, 500, 1,000?
400 to 500 at a response rate of 10%. That would be 4,000 to 5,000 phone calls, which would actually be significantly more expensive than mailing.
Well, statistically, by mail, you have a response rate of about 1%. And you're going to probably have less for this because you're not selling anything anybody really wants to buy. Hey, give me 10 minutes of your time to fill the survey out. Let's talk, but
Sure.
I like to make sure the people who are doing the survey actually know what they're doing and how to efficiently reach people. That is not an efficient way to reach people. People are not going to take an action on send them a postcard or a number 10 envelope.
Yes, they've done both. They've sent letters with a cover letter that comes from the city with the survey. Alternately, also postcards with just the link and a QR code.
I think you're going to have a tremendous self-response bias there. Now, for the $627,220 that we are now into this, it started out closer to $350. Now we're double that. Are we going to receive buildable architectural plans, or will we have to hire further engineers and architects on these two parks where we added?
There were 4 parks added, Mayor.
There are 4 parks. Are
So
we
we
going to
started
see?
at 350.
Are we
and
going to
added 4
receive
parks.
buildable plans?
Now, we will get conceptual level plans
This is
from the
for
consultant.
conceptual. Wow.
They were, each of the amendments were about $130,000 a pop to add the 4 parks. So in total, we paid about $260,000 to have the 4 site plans prepared.
Okay. I raised concerns. I'm sorry. I saw the product from Carlsbad. I read all 99 pages of it, or however many there were. I just want to reiterate, as we're in the middle of this process, that I'm not saying this isn't great work, because thank you for your good work. But what I am saying is this is not $627,000 worth of work. This whole project, including conceptuals for parks, which I have this great program called Smart Drive. You ever seen that? You never seen Smart Draw? Yeah, Smart Draw. Yeah, it's a CAD program for for do-it-yourselfers. I could design a park. I gave you 3 different designs, and I charge you a lot less than this. So if all we're getting is a conceptual design, it's not buildable. We're getting somebody's imagination for. I mean, I don't know how long you have to imagine to come up with 3 or 4, 10 different iterations of a park design, but like $127,000 for each CAD drawing. I know you have costs to cover, but I just really feel that our staff could have done this in-house. The most valuable part of it, I think, if it's done by a competent firm, would be the statistically valid survey, because getting the input of 500 people and trying to understand how they feel as opposed to just asking a few people, it matters, because we don't generally get 500 people to show up and participate. So, but we could have done that for $35,000 or $40,000 or less. This is a lot of money, and I'm lacking confidence right now that it was a good use of taxpayer dollars. I would have rather spent $627,000 on more solar lights for all the parks, or this would have been 1/10 of the recommended improvement budget for the wave. And when we did Palo Vista Park, which only earned a 3 out of 5 and is brand new, I don't know, how did we only get so you had a guy that's an expert, and we just built this thing. What was his rationale? It's brand new. Everything in it is brand new. Is there something, what did we do wrong that we only got a B?
Some of the other factors
really
in that are related to trail connection. So in that case, there's no trails connecting, so that gets a low score. So there's other factors. It's not just how it looks.
Isn't that right on the inland rail trail? Doesn't it go right?
That one might be. I'm just saying that's just another factor. There's other factors that go. Anyway.
Yeah, I just have to make this point. This is a lot of taxpayer money. We spent $500,000 on a previous landscape architect to design that park, and I'm not even sure that was. I'm not even sure, and nobody here was involved in that. I don't think. Maybe Ms. Huerta was, but did we? Did that include the engineering work, or was Andrew's landscape architecture work for $500,000 was just the consulting and all that? You don't have to come for it.
That was everything.
We're into millions of dollars of consulting on this stuff. When I don't understand why we're having a committee meeting right now, you're here right now. Why couldn't we email the public? Why can't we mail the public, invite them to have a meeting, listen to them? I knew what was going to come back was going to be, we want pickleball. We all knew that. Dan is absolutely right. We know, because we're hearing about it from the parents right now, we need more Little League fields. That is something we've got to focus on. I was up knocking in actually Council Member, Deputy Mayor Melendez's area, and I knocked on somebody's door about a week ago, and they said, I know you from the Little League. So people from all over the city are coming, they're driving long distance. We need more Little League fields. Thanks to our scholarship program, we have more people participating than ever before, which is awesome. But we need more of that. And I just, now that we're well past $1 million in these young people, you came to get your 1 hour and you're about to take off. This landscape architecture thing is what you want to go into. Turns out neurosurgery was not the correct choice. This is the one right here. I would definitely recommend this to you if you like to draw, if you like to work outdoors in nature. Come see these gentlemen. They can tell you how to get into it. Maybe they can hire you to find a career. It's extremely lucrative. So, no, I'm trying to joke a little bit, and I'm not trying to put you guys down, but the cost of this is exorbitant, and I don't see a product. And if citizens review the product of the Carlsbad report, and I have here, I could, ChatGPT would give me all these numbers from the census. This is a regurgitation of numbers that the federal government paid billions of dollars to, this is not new work. This is just a repackaging of publicly available information. To pay that kind of money for that, and hey, God bless you. You offered your services in an RFP. You offered, this is not your fault. We're the ones that did this. But this is to staff and to my colleagues on the council. Can this be enough with the $500,000 consulting contracts to hire people to hold meetings and put drawings together? I can't justify this to the taxpayer. This is a completely terrible use of taxpayer funds. If it was $100,000 to hold some meetings and draw some drawings, I get it, maybe. I still feel like that's a lot when we have excellent park staff. But I mean, how is it that as, parks manager, and we have great people, we could have had some fine interns do this kind of work, pull together, hey, get me all the demographic information so we can consider that as we think about this. I just have to lay this out there that we've really got to start thinking about the many millions of dollars in consulting agreements to do what? And as we look at the result of these things, and it would encourage citizens to review these final products and go, was that really $500,000? It defies all logic and understanding. And I'm in business, I employ people, and I just, these kind of numbers just don't exist in the private sector. They just don't happen. So I just can't I can't put my mind around it. I just can't. Deputy Mayor Melendez, for potentially the last comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to first echo some support for the comments of my colleagues. Appreciate you, Councilmember O'Donnell, catching the difference between softball and baseball fields. I'm certain there is a difference. I'm not quite exactly sure what that difference is, but I know that it matters. So if we could be sure to differentiate between those amenities in the survey, maybe it's sports amenities as a general concept is important to ask about. I also do support the expansion of the wave in any regard. It is hot. In fact, I was just remarking on that as we were coming into the session today, that it is really hot out there. So I would definitely support expanding our calendar depending on staff availability and what that would look like as an impact to just how much resources we need to allocate to the wave in order to allow people to use it as minimally as possible, just opening the pools, or as extravagantly as possible and really making the best use of the space. And then there were a couple numbers that were thrown out. Mayor mentioned $500,000 and other numbers. I didn't see it on this presentation, just for the benefit of the public. Could I get clarification on the exact costs for this particular project, this park master plan?
Sure. The original scope was for $354,820. That's for the park needs analysis that is the subject of tonight's workshop. In October, we amended it to add 2 site-specific park plans, one for Brengle Terrace and one for Madagwal, and we added $134,000 for a total of $489,220. And then in November, We added 2 more sites, the courthouse park site and the town site drive, which was the former detention basin site, for $138,000 for those 2 sites. So the total now is $627,220.
And I would love to hear from you, Mr. Conley, on what staff's participation has looked like in this process so far, because I do see, right, our city staff has been working with our consultants, and you know, how much more are the consultants going beyond the typical expectation of our park staff?
I'm going to let Mike answer that. He's been the one working with these.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of check-in meetings, and we're kind of on the hook for doing the marketing. So as far as getting the word out, when we're doing mailers to surrounding homes for the site-specific plans, that's city. Just answering general comments from the Parks Master Plan website. City staff is also with that. I mean, yes, the consultants definitely do all the heavy lifting. There's a lot of proprietary software that they're using we don't have access to. I mean, we haven't started any of that process yet. This is really just a, quick overview of some of the in-person meetings. So really haven't really started this big public engagement surveying process. But yeah, I appreciate the question. We definitely are, helping out, but this is really consultant driven. They're definitely doing most of the heavy lifting on it.
Mm-hmm. And how many staff do we have under your position?
For our department, for
Yes.
full-time positions, let's see, full-time positions, we've got probably 50 full-time with
Okay.
all
And
divisions
out of
included.
those 50 staff members, what number of staff people would be equipped to perform the same activities that we are receiving in this consulting contract?
I would say probably nobody has the landscape architect background for something like this, or even the planning kind of background.
Okay. But we are utilizing our staff to do the communications portion of this project.
Correct. Fred Tracy's team has been really doing a lot of is definitely in charge of helping us with the communication aspect.
Okay. And do you think that there would be a way for us to do this activity with our current staff that are currently working in our parks and recreation?
I don't think so.
Okay, and why is that?
Yeah, just seeing at what this kind of level of resources it would take. We're just doing our daily jobs, and I could defer to the city manager on this too.
Let me answer this. I think if you want to get a plan from our current staff, yes, our staff could come up with a plan for each park site. Would it be informed by the public and the input that these folks are going to get, or have the expertise of the consultants that we've hired? No, it would not. So that's the reason that we hired these people.
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing from you, Mayor, that, and you voted on this contract, I'm hearing that there might be some regret in that, and it's worthwhile investigating. And planning is very important. So I think we can all agree on that planning is very important, and we want to have a plan that serves the needs of the public, because many of these park spaces have been neglected. And that is a burden that is not as obvious as the $600-something thousand that we're spending on the planning to try to correct our park landscape and make it most suitable for the community. So I'm always interested in doing these activities in-house, and I'd like to work closely with our city manager to get a lot done. And I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of this contract, because I think it can be very fruitful. But I do tend to agree with the mayor in that I would be interested in finding more direct ways to reach people with the survey. I think that you'll get more participation from a wider cohort versus those who are more responsive to mail. And I'm wondering what we can do to include maybe a text initiative, right, or something like that. Would you have any suggestions on how we can enhance the survey reach?
So I think the digital mechanisms certainly help as long as we can ensure statistical validity. If I text it to somebody, I have to be able to prove to you that that is your resident, right? Who's taking it? How many times has it been forwarded as well? Did 5 other people take it, or was it a single-use link? That's where it becomes harder. Not to say it's not been done, because they do ask people, even when these are done digitally, to enter the home address, and they match it with what was randomly chosen. So that's where, to the point in terms of increasing outreach, and I agree, Mayor, in terms of getting more people to respond to it. They have done more with social media outreach as well. They've done more with postcards too, as opposed to somebody filling out paper-based surveys entirely, which not many do anymore at all. And those that do typically tend to skew older and not younger. So that has been done. It's just the balance between maximizing outreach and ensuring statistical validity, so that you're not skewing results, which we often see in online-only surveys, by a special interest group sending it to everybody on their mailing list and saying, please fill this out, and tell them that underwater basket weaving is the most important thing in Vista. So that's the balance we're trying to strike.
Okay, I'm a bit more understanding of why we would send directly to Vista addresses now. I can see that. But there is a consequence, right, of not using a digital form to be able to reach people. So that's great information.
Yeah.
Thank you. Everything
and
is really
if I
helpful
can
for us to
add,
consider.
Deputy Mayor, it's not either or, it's and, right? So they will have the QR code and the postcard with the QR code and the social media ads in addition to the print. So it's not just print, and if you don't do it, there's nothing else. They follow up with a phone call as well, if that address has not. But not everybody has landlines anymore, so that also becomes challenging. If they don't have a landline, then they have no access to cell phone numbers.
So I would love to kind of test, how good do you think you are at this, right? And if you could bet on yourself, how many responses do you think we will get to this survey?
To the statistically valid one, you will exceed the target established. If it's 400 or 450, we will exceed that number. I have not, in 20 years of doing this, and we don't do this, it's an independent firm, we have never not gotten the responses back, and I speak of the agencies all around you, Carlsbad, Thrice, the city of San Diego itself. We just finished San Bernardino, as well as Beaumont and Eastvale, and they've all exceeded the numbers.
Well, I'm sure the public is wondering this. 400 to 450, that's kind of low, right? Shouldn't we want to hear from more people? And why is that the target?
For statistical reliability, that's not low. In terms of actual input, we're going to get far more, because we will also have the online options that we talked about. So through the website, through the communications team, through the mailing list, honestly, you all are the best evangelists and advocates, and you all have been doing great getting the word out. So it's going to take all of those for overarching community input. It's just for statistically valid survey sampling. That's where the 400 or 450 number for your population is considered a statistically reliable sample at a 5% margin of error and a 95% level of confidence.
Okay, thank you so much for that information and the discussion.
I just want to close by saying that the architect of the United States Capitol won a competition. He was paid $500, which is probably roughly about $50,000 in today's dollars, for designing the United States Capitol building. It was a competition. If you go to the U.S. Capitol building and you walk in the crypt, which is the entry level on the first floor, you can see all of the designs that were submitted by architects all over the world. And it was an American physician, not an architect, William Thornton, who was the winning designer of the U.S. Capitol building and collected the $500. So I suggest in the future that we put up a prize of, if we're going to pay $100,000, I'd put up a prize of $25,000. And I'll bet you many talented artists, if that's really, I mean, we're getting a drawing. Now, it's going to take the input, but you're doing the advertising for the input. I've been to the meetings. We're conducting a conversation. We're taking feedback. We're whiteboarding. I can whiteboard. I'll do it for free. No problem. Goes with the job description. Councilmember O'Donnell, you're going to get the last word tonight.
Another fun fact, George Washington was supposed to be buried in the Capitol building, but they chose not to. I have one quick question for you based on something you said earlier and some of the comments that the deputy mayor made. So statistically valid, 450, but per your data, we're $9,000 below the median income in the state of California. And I believe you had said that those that are lower earners or make lower wages tend to participate less. So is it still statistically valid if there are people that are higher wage earners that are participating in this survey and those that may get left out based on what you had said earlier?
So I don't recollect the participate less portion. That might be participate less more in terms of program participation because of affordability versus survey participation. I think it's much more a function of methodology and medium, which is where the print is certainly much harder as well. In terms of the sampling part, this is why also the statistically reliable survey sampling is the most representative, because they try to control for the survey respondents to mirror the demographics of Vista. So as close as possible, the survey respondents from a gender standpoint or a race and ethnicity standpoint as well will be a microcosm of Vista's demographics, which no other mechanism, postcards, text messages, social media, public meetings can ever replicate accurately, which is why that is a differentiator.
These are all dual language when they're sent out? Perfect. Okay, that was my only question.
That's called stratification. Have a good night, everyone. We're adjourned.